The billionaire cursed loudly, his voice echoing through the stormy winds and pouring rain. He was on his way to sign a billion-dollar deal when suddenly his car veered to the side of the road. One of the tires had blown out. With no cell phone signal, everything seemed hopeless. Out of nowhere, 3 teenage boys appeared, laughing and chatting. "Need some help, sir?" one of them asked. In just 20 minutes, the boys had replaced the damaged tire. The billionaire reached into his wallet to offer them some money as a thank you, but they refused. A few days later, a black SUV pulled up in front of the boys' home, delivering some very special gifts. Reflecting on this true story, the billionaire had a newfound appreciation for the kindness of strangers. Chris, a self-made white billionaire, was driving his luxury car carefully, aware that the weather was not on his side. The rain pounded on the roof of his sleek black Mercedes, each drop a reminder of his already crumbling schedule. The windshield wipers worked furiously to clear his view of the winding, desolate road. He glanced at the glowing digits on his dashboard. Only 45 minutes until his crucial meeting in the city. This wasn't just any meeting. It was a billion-dollar deal that could define his career even further. Chris had always prided himself on being in control, but today, control slipped from his grasp. The car jolted violently, accompanied by the unmistakable thud of a flat tire. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling the car over onto the narrow shoulder. Stepping out into the downpour, his tailored suit quickly soaked through. The wind whipped around him, and the muddy roadside squelched under his leather shoes. He opened the trunk, staring at the spare tire and feeling a wave of helplessness. Changing a tire wasn't exactly in his repertoire. He had people for that. Standing on the outskirts of a small, deserted town, surrounded by fields and hills, Chris realized there was no one around to help. His phone had no signal, and if he didn't make it to the meeting on time, he'd lose the deal and tarnish his reputation. Just as he was about to give up, faint laughter pierced through the rain. He squinted into the distance and saw 3 figures on bicycles approaching him. They were teenage boys, no older than 15, their laughter cutting through the storm. They wore mismatched raincoats, each splattered with mud. The tallest boy, with curly hair and a worn-out blue raincoat, called out, "Hey, mister, need some help?" Chris straightened up, blinking in disbelief. He glanced at their bicycles and then at their youthful faces. His instinct was to politely decline, but he was in no position to turn down help. Yeah, I got a flat tire," he admitted, gesturing toward the damaged tire, "but I'm not sure if you can help." The boy in the blue raincoat, Ethan, interrupted with a confident grin. His 2 friends, Tony and Peter, nodded eagerly. "We've done this loads of times. Well, mostly on bikes, but it's the same idea." Chris hesitated, watching as Ethan handed his bike to Tony and knelt down to inspect the tire. "You got a spare, right?" Ethan asked, peering up at him through rain-spattered glasses. "In the trunk," Chris said, stepping aside. The boys moved with natural rhythm, each taking on a role as if rehearsed. Tony fetched the jack and wrench from the trunk, while Ethan expertly worked on the tire. Within minutes, the job was done. Chris was amazed at how quickly and efficiently they worked, considering their youth. As the rain continued to pour, Chris offered the boys money as a thank you, but they refused. "No, sir, it's all good," Ethan said with a smile. "We were just happy to help." A few days later, an SUV pulled up in front of the boys' home, delivering a special gift as a token of appreciation for their kindness. Let this story remind us of the unexpected ways help can come our way, and how sometimes a small act of kindness can change lives. Had never encountered before, and it struck him deeply. In his world, everything had a price, a negotiation, a deal to be made. But those boys had given him something he couldn't buy: genuine kindness. They hadn't asked for anything in return, no favor, no recognition. They had simply seen someone in need and acted, without hesitation, without expecting compensation. As Chris sat there, the weight of their selflessness settled over him. It made him question the motivations that had shaped his life. The constant drive for success, the endless pursuit of more. He'd built his empire on deals, on getting something for something. But in that moment, in the quiet after the storm, he realized how little he truly understood about giving, about doing something for someone else without any expectation. The boys' laughter, their easy camaraderie, echoed in his mind. It was the sound of a kind of freedom, of living in the moment without the heavy burden of expectations. Chris had spent his life running from one goal to the next, but those boys had reminded him of something important. Life wasn't just about what you could gain. It was also about what you could give, without any strings attached. The conference room, the meeting, the deal. It all felt distant now, like something that belonged to another version of himself. He had won the deal, yes, but what did it really mean if he had lost touch with the simple, meaningful connections that made life richer? Chris stared out at the city, the storm clouds finally parting as the rain began to ease. He realized that no matter how many deals he closed, no matter how much money he made, the lesson those boys had taught him would stay with him long after the papers were signed. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to chase something just to prove his worth. Instead, he felt the need to reflect, to act with the same kindness and selflessness that the boys had shown him. The deal was done, but in a way, it felt less significant now. What mattered was something simpler, something more profound. And as Chris leaned back in his chair, he couldn't help but wonder if perhaps it was time for him to live a little differently. Down some thoughts, but instead, he opened it to reveal a page with a handwritten note inside. He handed the notebook to Ethan. "I want you to take this," Chris said, his voice steady but earnest. "It's not much, but it's a small token of my appreciation. I've been thinking about how you three handled the situation, and it made me realize something. There's more to life than business deals and money. You've taught me that." Ethan looked down at the notebook, slightly confused at first, then glanced at Tony and Peter. Tony raised an eyebrow, but Peter just shrugged, seemingly unfazed. "I don't know what's inside, but we don't need anything from you," Ethan said gently, though his smile betrayed a hint of warmth. "We did it because it was the right thing to do, not because we were looking for anything in return." Chris nodded, feeling a knot form in his chest as he realized how true those words were. "I know, and that's what makes it so important to me. You didn't expect anything. It's rare to find people like you in my world, and that's why I wanted to give you something, not as a reward, but as a sign of my gratitude. I guess you could say it's a reminder for me too." Tony glanced at the notebook again, still skeptical but softening. "You sure? I mean, we're just kids. We don't need fancy stuff. A thank you is enough." Chris smiled, a genuine smile this time, one that reached his eyes. "I understand, but consider this a symbol, something to remind you that kindness goes a long way, even if it's not always recognized." After a long moment, Ethan took the notebook, flipping through its pages to find a letter Chris had written to them. In the letter, Chris expressed his admiration for their selflessness and how their actions had shifted his perspective. He also promised to fund a scholarship in their names, something that would help them continue their education without worrying about finances. "We're just doing what's right," Ethan repeated, his voice quiet now as he read the words on the page. "This is a lot." Chris leaned back, letting them process it. He knew the boys might not fully understand the gravity of the gesture, and that was okay. What mattered was the lesson, the realization that generosity didn't always need to be reciprocated, and that sometimes the best reward was simply knowing you made a difference. Tony and Peter remained quiet for a while, before Peter finally spoke up. "I guess we'll make sure we use it for something good, for school and stuff." "Yeah," Tony added, a small smile breaking across his face. "Thanks, mister." Chris stood up, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't expected. "You're welcome. Just remember, if you ever need anything, you know where to find me. But most of all, don't forget what you did for me. It means more than you think." With that, Chris turned to leave, but not before catching one last glimpse of the three boys, still laughing, still carefree. The sun was now fully breaking through the clouds, and as he drove away, Chris knew that the world he had once thought he controlled was only one part of the bigger picture. The true power lay in human connections, in moments like these that couldn't be measured in dollars or deals. And for the first time in a long time, Chris felt like he was on the right path. Papers, their faces focused on a project. The walls were adorned with colorful artwork made by the local kids, but the general wear of the place was undeniable. The faint sound of laughter and the buzz of conversation echoed from different corners, giving the center a sense of life, despite its dilapidated state. Chris approached the boys, who looked up with surprise as he entered. Ethan stood first, offering a smile that was both welcoming and cautious. "Mr. Chris," he said, as Tony and Peter turned their attention toward him. "I told you I'd be back," Chris replied with a grin. He scanned the room, taking in the community's energy. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the community center." The boys exchanged glances, as if unsure what to expect. "You didn't have to come all the way out here," Tony said, his tone still humble. Chris waved off the comment. "No, I wanted to. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this place deserves a little help. You were right. This isn't just about bikes or rewards. It's about the future, and this community center is an important part of that." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Chris pulled out his phone and showed them a series of plans, architectural sketches, and budget estimates for a complete overhaul of the center. "I've called in a few favors. We're going to fix the roof, update the equipment, and even get a new playground for the kids. I'm bringing in a team to do the work, but we'll need your help to organize things and get the kids involved. I want this place to be better than it's ever been." The boys stared at him, disbelief settling in their expressions. "You're really going to help?" Peter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am," Chris replied, his voice steady. "This isn't just a donation, though. I want you to be part of the process. You've already shown me what it means to care about something bigger than yourselves. Now it's time to build something that'll last, not just for you, but for the whole town." Ethan's eyes shone with a mix of gratitude and awe. He paused, struggling to find the words. "We never thought anyone would care enough to help like this." "Thank you, Mr. Chris." Chris smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "It's not just me, Ethan. It's all of you. You've inspired me to do more, to be more. This is your community, and I'm just here to lend a hand." As the conversation continued, the energy in the room shifted. The boys were no longer just receiving help. They were actively planning, brainstorming, and becoming leaders in their own right. They couldn't contain their excitement as they talked about what the improvements could mean for the younger kids who would one day walk through those doors. After some time, Chris excused himself, promising to return once the plans were in motion. He knew this was only the beginning. His involvement with the community center wasn't about recognition or acknowledgement. It was about creating lasting change, driven by the example of 3 young boys who had shown him that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the depth of one's impact on others. As he walked back to his car, Chris felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing he was part of something that transcended business and personal gain. The world could indeed use more people like Ethan, Tony, and Peter, people who understood that helping others was its own reward, painting the new walls. They were hands-on in every aspect of the project, not just as witnesses, but as active participants. Chris often stopped by to check on the progress, his pride growing as the community center began to take shape. One afternoon, as the new playground equipment was being installed, Chris watched from a distance as the boys played around with the construction crew, laughing and joking with the workers. It was a beautiful moment, watching them connect with the team that was helping bring the vision to life. Their sense of ownership and pride in the project was evident, and it reminded Chris why he had made the decision to help in the first place. As the weeks passed, the center transformed. The once dilapidated building now boasted fresh coats of paint, sturdy walls, and a new roof. The playground, once a bare and forgotten space, now featured swings, a climbing structure, and a sandbox, all designed with the kids in mind. Inside, new furniture and equipment were brought in to replace the outdated and broken down pieces. On the day the renovations were completed, Chris invited the entire town to a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The air was filled with excitement and anticipation as the community gathered to see the finished product. Ethan, Tony, and Peter stood proudly by Chris's side, their smiles wide and full of joy as they looked at what they had helped create. Karen, the director, was nearly speechless with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough, Chris. This place is going to change lives. You've done more than just fix a building. You've given us hope," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Chris shook his head, a humble smile on his face. "It's not just me. This was a team effort. These boys, Ethan, Tony, and Peter, they were the ones who made me see how important this place is. This is their work, too." The boys beamed with pride, and the crowd applauded. Chris stood back for a moment, taking in the scene. There was laughter, chatter, and a sense of community that hadn't been there before. He knew the transformation of the community center was just the beginning. The work they had done together would impact not only the kids who came after school, but the entire town. It would be a place where children could come, learn, play, and build connections, just as Ethan, Tony, and Peter had done for him. As Chris drove away that evening, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had accomplished something meaningful. The world was filled with opportunities to make a difference. And sometimes, all it took was a moment of kindness and a willingness to help. He had seen firsthand how one small act of generosity could ripple out, creating change that would last for years to come. And as he looked back at the community center one last time, he knew that the lesson he had learned from the boys about selflessness, community, and the importance of giving was a lesson he would carry with him forever. "3 should have the honor of testing it out first," he said, with a grin. Without hesitation, The boys sprinted toward the swings, laughing and shouting as they climbed aboard. Their carefree joy was contagious, drawing cheers and applause from the gathered crowd. Parents watched with smiles as their children lined up to join in, eager to experience the new playground. The air buzzed with excitement and pride. This wasn't just about a new play area. It was about what had been accomplished together. Chris stood there, watching the boys swing higher and higher, the sound of their laughter filling the air. For the first time in a long while, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what it was all about: community, connection, and the ability to make a real difference. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the town, Karen joined Chris on the steps of the community center. She handed him a cup of coffee, her voice filled with emotion. "You've changed this place, Chris," she said softly, "but I think you've also changed yourself." Chris chuckled, taking a sip of the coffee. "You're not wrong," he admitted, his gaze still on the boys. "Those boys, they reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Kindness doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as stopping to help someone in need." Karen smiled, her eyes sparkling, "And sometimes it grows into something much bigger." As the event wound down and families began to head home, Ethan, Tony, and Peter found Chris near his car. They stood quietly for a moment, their faces serious but full of gratitude. "Mr. Chris," Ethan said, his voice earnest, "we just wanted to say thanks, not just for the center, but for everything." Chris knelt down to their level, meeting each of their eyes. "No, thank you. If it weren't for you three, I wouldn't have remembered what really matters." Tony shifted, his hands in his pockets. "You know, we just thought we were helping with a flat tire." Chris smiled and reached out to tousle Tony's hair. "You did more than that, Tony. You helped me fix something I didn't even realize was broken." Peter grinned, his eyes twinkling. "Well, if you ever need help again, you know where to find us." Chris laughed softly. "I think I'll take you up on that one day." As the boys walked back toward their families, Chris stood by his car, watching them go. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment settle over him. The community center wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of what could happen when people came together, when they chose kindness over indifference. Driving away that night, Chris didn't feel the emptiness that had once been his constant companion. Instead, he felt whole, his heart and mind aligned with the truth that had been hidden in plain sight all along. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness created ripples that could change the world. Found Chris near his car. They stood quietly for a moment before Ethan stepped forward. "Mr. Chris, we just wanted to say thanks, not just for the center, but for everything," Ethan said, his voice earnest. Chris knelt to their level, looking each of them in the eye. "No, thank you. If it weren't for you three, I wouldn't have remembered what really matters." Tony shifted his hands in his pockets, looking up at Chris. "You know, we just thought we were helping with a flat tire." Chris laughed, reaching out to tousle Tony's hair. "You did more than that, Tony. You helped me fix something I didn't even realize was broken." Peter grinned, his eyes twinkling. "Well, if you ever need help again, you know where to find us." Chris stood, smiling warmly at the boys. "I think I'll take you up on that one day." The boys waved as they walked back toward their families, leaving Chris standing by his car. He watched them go, a profound sense of fulfillment settling over him. As Chris drove away that night, he didn't feel the emptiness that had once been his constant companion. Instead, he felt whole. The community center wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of what could happen when people came together, when they chose kindness over indifference. Chris glanced out the window at the quiet streets. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Wanted to capture a meaningful moment. The way the boys helped him rediscover what really matters and how the community came together speaks to the deeper power of kindness and connection. The way the community center transformation became a symbol for change, not just for the town, but for Chris's personal growth. It's a beautiful narrative about how simple acts of kindness can leave a lasting impact. If this is the conclusion you're aiming for, it leaves the audience with a powerful reflection on how small gestures ripple out to create something much bigger. The final message about choosing kindness over indifference feels like a call to action that can resonate with a wide audience.